The courtroom was quiet, the kind of silence that carries its own weight. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, her sharp eyes focused on the case before her, when suddenly, out of nowhere, a voice cut through the stillness. "Excuse me, but you're wrong, Judge." The entire room froze. Gasps slipped through the audience, papers shuffled, and even the bailiff's hand twitched toward order. No one ever dared to interrupt Judge Judy like that. Yet here stood a woman, chin lifted, arms crossed, her voice dripping with entitlement as she stared directly at Judy herself. Friends, ask yourself this. What kind of person has the audacity to talk back to Judge Judy in her own courtroom? Was she confused, desperate, or simply reckless? The truth, as we would soon discover, was far darker, and far more shocking, than anyone could have guessed. Judge Judy didn't flinch. Not a single muscle moved on her face, though her eyes narrowed just slightly, the way a lioness narrows her gaze before deciding if the prey has just made a fatal mistake. The woman didn't stop there. She raised her voice again. "You don't know the truth. You don't know me." Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Who was this woman who dared to claim she knew better than Judge Judy? Why was she so determined to take control of a space that had never, in all its years, belonged to anyone but Judy herself? But here's where curiosity digs deeper, friends. Because what she shouted next, what spilled from her mouth in arrogance and misplaced confidence, wasn't just an interruption. It was a clue, a glimpse into a secret life she had spent years burying. And Judy, sharp as ever, caught it instantly. She tilted her head, her tone calm but laced with a hidden edge. "Ma'am, do you realize what you've just admitted?" The woman blinked, confusion flashing across her face for just a fraction of a second. And that was all Judy needed. In that micro-expression, in that single heartbeat of hesitation, Judy saw the unraveling of an entire story. And friends, you won't believe what that story revealed. For in that single moment of arrogance, the entitled woman exposed herself, not just as rude or impatient, but as someone hiding a past, a truth so heavy it could shatter her entire facade. But what was it? A hidden arrest record? A criminal scheme? Or a betrayal so personal it cut deeper than any courtroom ruling ever could? The gavel hadn't even struck, and yet the atmosphere felt like it was about to explode. Viewers leaned closer. Spectators held their breath. Everyone knew that this was no ordinary case. This wasn't just Judge Judy versus another arrogant guest. This was something else, something personal, raw, and unforgettable. And the question burned in every heart watching that day. What secret could possibly bring an entitled woman to risk everything by standing up against Judge Judy? The answer was only seconds away. To understand the weight of what had just happened, you first need to know the courtroom that this woman so brazenly interrupted, and the judge she dared to defy. Judge Judy. A name known across America. A woman whose sharp tongue and unshakable presence have become legendary. For decades, Judy has ruled her courtroom with precision, authority, and a kind of wisdom sharpened by years of both law and life. She doesn't suffer fools, she doesn't tolerate arrogance, and she has a way of cutting straight through lies with nothing more than a single question. Her courtroom is more than just a stage for small claims disputes. It's a place where truth is revealed, where arrogance meets its match, and where millions of viewers around the world tune in to see justice served with an edge of wit. To interrupt Judge Judy isn't just disrespectful, it's almost unthinkable. And yet, on this particular day, that unthinkable act had unfolded before the eyes of everyone present. The case itself at first glance seemed ordinary enough. A dispute between two neighbors over property damage and unpaid bills. On one side, a man who looked weary but determined to finally have his voice heard. On the other, a woman who walked in with the kind of confidence that didn't belong in a courtroom, it belonged on a throne. Her expensive jewelry glistened under the lights, her hair was styled to perfection, and her smirk suggested that she had already decided the outcome before Judy ever spoke. Friends, imagine it. Every step she took into that courtroom carried arrogance. She didn't glance nervously at the audience the way most people do. She didn't shift uncomfortably as the cameras rolled. No, this woman walked as though the courtroom itself owed her respect. The man, her neighbor, barely looked at her. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched. But Judy noticed everything. She always did. "Ma'am, are you ready to proceed?" Judy asked in her usual, clipped tone. The woman tilted her chin upward, let out a laugh that felt more like a dismissal and replied, "Of course. I have nothing to hide." But those words carried a strange weight, didn't they? Nothing to hide. It was almost as if she was daring the courtroom to dig deeper. And as we all know, when arrogance meets Judge Judy, there is no place left to hide. The audience leaned in. Even through the cameras, viewers at home could feel it. Something wasn't right about this case. Something about the woman's demeanor, her casual arrogance, and her constant interruptions felt different. She wasn't just defending herself, she was trying to dominate the room, as if silencing her neighbor wasn't enough. She wanted to silence Judy too. But here's the thing about Judge Judy: arrogance is her fuel. The more entitled someone acts, the more determined she becomes to peel back every layer until the truth stands bare. And friends, let's pause here for a moment and ask, what kind of secret could drive a person to act like this? What could make someone so desperate to assert control in a courtroom where they had none? Was it simply pride? Or was it fear that at any moment the mask could slip and the truth could come crashing out into the open? The neighbor began his testimony. He spoke of late-night arguments, of unpaid damages, of endless excuses. He spoke of threats whispered through walls and of a woman who thought rules were for everyone else but her. Through it all, she sat there, smiling smugly, crossing her legs as though the courtroom was her personal stage. Each word he spoke rolled off her shoulders like water. But Judy saw the cracks beginning to form. She always did. "Is any of this true, ma'am?" Judy asked, her voice steady but her eyes sharp. The woman leaned forward, raised her voice, and interrupted. "None of it matters, Judge. You should be asking him why he's so obsessed with me." Gasps rippled through the audience again. It wasn't just a denial, it was a deflection, the kind people use when they've run out of lies that sound convincing. And in that moment, the stage was set. This wasn't going to be an ordinary dispute between neighbors. This was going to be a clash of arrogance versus truth, pride versus justice, and an entitled woman against a judge who had spent her entire career exposing secrets just like hers. Little did she know, the very words she spoke would become the unraveling thread of the hidden story she had fought for years to bury. The air inside the courtroom was already tight with tension, but what happened next pushed it to a breaking point. As the neighbor continued his testimony, the entitled woman leaned back in her chair, arms folded, a smirk dancing across her lips. And then, without hesitation, she cut him off. "That's a lie," she snapped, her voice echoing off the walls. "He's exaggerating everything. He's just jealous of me and you're falling for it." The courtroom erupted in whispers. People turned their heads, shocked at her brazenness. Everyone knew it was one thing to defend yourself, but to interrupt proceedings like this, especially in Judge Judy's courtroom, was a line no one crossed. Judge Judy's head turned slowly toward her. No anger yet, no outburst, just that piercing, razor-sharp gaze. "Ma'am," Judy said softly, "this is my courtroom. You will not interrupt while someone else is speaking. Do you understand?" For a brief second, silence. But then, unbelievably, the woman chuckled. "Oh please, Judge. Everyone knows you play favorites. I'm not going to sit here while lies are being told about me." Gasps filled the room again. The audacity. The arrogance. Friends, can you imagine saying something like that to Judge Judy, the woman whose name is synonymous with courtroom authority? But the entitled woman didn't stop there. She kept going. "You think you're intimidating, but I've dealt with people far scarier than you. You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through." And there it was, that slip of the tongue. "You don't know what I've been through." The audience might have missed it, but Judy didn't. That single line was like blood in the water, and Judy, the shark of truth, smelled it instantly. "Why don't you tell us then?" Judy replied calmly, almost too calmly. "Since you seem so eager to speak out of turn, why don't you tell us exactly what we don't know about you?" The woman's face tightened, her eyes darting for the first time. But then she snapped back with defiance. "It's none of your business. What matters is that I'm right and he's wrong. Case closed." Case closed? The arrogance was astounding. The neighbor shook his head, muttering under his breath. The bailiff stepped forward slightly, sensing the storm about to break. "And Judy?" She sat back in her chair, a slow, deliberate smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Friends, have you ever seen a cat corner a mouse? That's exactly what it felt like. The mouse may squeal, may dart around, may even bare its teeth, but the cat always knows how this ends. "Case closed," Judy repeated. "That's not how this works. This is my courtroom and I decide when it's closed." The woman huffed, rolling her eyes so dramatically the audience couldn't help but murmur in disbelief. "Fine. Ask your little questions. It doesn't matter. You won't find anything on me." Again, that word. Anything on me. Why phrase it like that unless there was, in fact, something to find? The neighbor picked up where he had left off, speaking of unpaid damages and harassment, but again she interrupted. "That's ridiculous," she barked. "He's lying because he's broke. He wants money from me because he can't handle my success. That's what this is really about." Success. Judy cut in, her eyebrow raised. Tell me, what do you do that makes you so successful? The woman froze. Her mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time, words didn't come easily. She fumbled, muttered something about private ventures, and waved her hand as if it were irrelevant. But Judy leaned forward, refusing to let the moment pass. Answer the question. What do you do? The tension grew heavier. The woman's arrogance began to look less like confidence and more like desperation. Why couldn't she answer a simple question about her own life? What was she hiding? The audience could feel it too. Curiosity spread like wildfire through the room. Every whisper, every sideways glance carried the same unspoken thought. What is this woman so afraid of revealing? And friends, here's where the suspense truly tightened. Because Judy didn't explode. She didn't shout. She did something far more dangerous. She went quiet. That silence pressed down on the woman harder than any insult could. Finally, she blurted out, "You wouldn't understand. People like you never do. People like you." The venom in her voice was unmistakable. She wanted control, she wanted superiority, and she thought dismissing Judy would give her the upper hand. But all it really did was expose the cracks even further. Judy nodded slowly, as though confirming something only she could see. Then she turned to the neighbor again. Continue. But the woman couldn't hold back. She jumped in once more, louder this time, desperate. You're making a mistake, Judge. If you dig too deep, you'll regret it. The threat hung in the air. Not just rude now, not just entitled, but threatening. And that was the moment the tide shifted. The courtroom audience sat on the edge of their seats. Everyone could feel it. There was more to this woman's story than petty arrogance. The way she lashed out, the way her words trembled under the weight of hidden fear, it all pointed to something bigger. What secret was she hiding? Why did the mere thought of digging deeper send her into such a panic? Judge Judy's lips curved into the faintest smile. She had seen this before, many times. People who thought they could control the room, only to crumble when the spotlight turned on them. Ma'am, Judy said finally, her voice calm but unyielding, I think it's time we find out exactly who you are. The gavel hadn't even struck, and yet the entire courtroom knew. The storm was only beginning. The moment had come. Judge Judy leaned forward, her gaze locked on the entitled woman as if she could see straight through her. The courtroom was still, everyone waiting, everyone holding their breath. Tell me again, Judy began, her tone deceptively casual, what exactly do you do for a living? The woman crossed her arms tighter, her shoulders rising like shields. I told you, it's private. You wouldn't understand my world. Judy raised an eyebrow. Private? Or hidden? The words struck like a hammer, and the woman flinched almost imperceptibly. It was a small crack, but Judy never missed those. She pressed harder. Ma'am, this is a courtroom, not your personal kingdom. You don't get to pick and choose which truths we see. Either you answer or I'll find the answer myself. The audience buzzed, anticipation rising like a drumbeat. The woman shifted, her bravado slipping. For the first time her voice wavered. Oh, I manage some investments. Investments, Judy repeated, the skepticism dripping from every syllable. And what kind of investments would those be? Stocks? Real estate? Or perhaps something you'd rather we didn't put under a microscope? The silence that followed was deafening. And then Judy turned as if on cue to her bailiff. Do we have the records I requested earlier? The bailiff nodded and handed her a thick folder. Judy opened it slowly, deliberately, the way a surgeon opens an incision, knowing the cut will reveal what the patient hoped to keep hidden. Friends, what came next left everyone stunned. According to these documents, Judy said, holding the papers up for emphasis, you've filed for bankruptcy not once but 3 times in the last decade. Is that what you call successful investments? The woman's face drained of color. She tried to laugh it off, but it came out brittle. Those were mistakes. Everyone has setbacks. Judy's eyes narrowed. Setbacks are one thing. But unpaid debts totaling over $200,000? And that's not all. She flipped another page. The tension in the room was unbearable. There are also 3 separate fraud allegations filed against you, dismissed only because the plaintiffs couldn't afford to pursue them. Care to explain that? The courtroom gasped. Murmurs rippled through the rows of spectators. The neighbor's eyes widened with vindication. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The woman's composure cracked like glass. She raised her voice, desperate, defensive. Those were lies. People trying to ruin me. None of it was ever proven. Not proven, Judy said firmly, doesn't mean not true. And your behavior here today only adds weight to those allegations. Interrupting, deflecting, threatening, classic signs of someone terrified that their house of cards is about to fall. The woman shook her head furiously. You can't do this. You don't know what it's like to be me. But Judy wasn't finished. She turned back to the file, her voice calm, almost surgical. There's more. A warrant was issued 5 years ago for check fraud. The case was later closed, but not because you were innocent, because you reached a private settlement. Isn't that correct? The woman's lips trembled. She tried to speak, but no words came out. And then, like a final blow, Judy revealed the deepest cut. And let's not forget the eviction. You left an entire apartment complex in ruins, owing thousands in unpaid rent, utilities, and damages. Ma'am, this isn't success. This is a trail of destruction. Everywhere you go, you leave chaos behind. And today you thought you could leave it here too. The audience erupted. Gasps, whispers, even a few audible, "Oh my God" reactions echoed through the room. It wasn't just arrogance anymore. It wasn't just entitlement. It was exposure. Friends, imagine standing in that courtroom watching the mask slip from someone who thought they could never be touched. Imagine the weight of secrets unraveling, one page at a time, until there's nowhere left to hide. The woman covered her face with her hands, her voice cracking. This isn't fair. You don't understand what I've been through. I did what I had to do to survive. For the first time, the arrogance was gone. In its place was desperation. Fear. Shame. But Judy, unmoved, leaned closer. Survival doesn't excuse fraud. Struggle doesn't justify lies. Everyone in this courtroom has been through something hard. But most people don't destroy others along the way. The woman slammed her hand on the desk, tears spilling down her cheeks. Stop. Just stop. You don't know me. And that's when Judy delivered the line that silenced everyone. On the contrary, ma'am. Today we all know you better than you wanted us to. And the truth is far uglier than the facade you tried to sell us. The entitled woman collapsed back into her seat, broken. The audience sat in stunned silence. The neighbor looked relieved, vindicated, as though a heavy weight had finally been lifted. And yet, as heavy as the revelations were, Judy wasn't done. The ruling was still to come, and with it, the final lesson. But friends, think about this for a moment. What happens when the lies you've built your life on are stripped away in public? What happens when your darkest secrets are laid bare in front of strangers, in front of cameras, in front of the world? That was the reality the entitled woman faced in that very moment. And the worst part? The final blow had yet to land. The silence in the courtroom was suffocating. The entitled woman sat trembling, her once proud posture shattered, her eyes darting wildly as though searching for an escape that didn't exist. The mask of arrogance she had worn so confidently only moments ago had been ripped away, and all that remained was raw fear. She opened her mouth, and for the first time, her voice cracked. You don't understand, she whispered, barely audible. You don't know what it's like to fight every single day just to stay afloat. Judge Judy leaned forward, her gaze sharp but not cruel. Everyone fights, ma'am. The difference is in how we choose to fight. Some fight with honesty, others with lies. And lies, as you've just seen, always come crashing down. The woman shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. I didn't have a choice. You think I wanted to be this person? You think I enjoyed pretending? You don't know what I've been through. Her voice rose, the words tumbling out like a confession she had fought for years to suppress. I was drowning in debt. I was abandoned. No one ever helped me. So yes, I took shortcuts. Yes, I did what I had to do. And if that makes me a monster in your eyes, then fine. The audience sat frozen. Some eyes softened in pity, others hardened in judgment. But Judy's expression didn't change. She let the woman's words hang in the air, heavy and desperate. Then she spoke, her tone low and precise. Ma'am, struggle doesn't give you the right to step on others. Pain doesn't give you a license to cheat. And arrogance doesn't erase accountability. The woman broke. Her sobs echoed through the room, filling the quiet like a storm of grief. She clutched at the edge of the podium, her hands shaking, her tears smearing her once flawless makeup. Please, she begged. Please don't humiliate me like this. I can't take it. Not here, not in front of everyone. Please. But Judy's words sliced through the plea. This isn't humiliation. This is truth. And truth has been waiting for you for a long time. The weight of those words seemed to crush her further. She fell into the chair, shoulders collapsing, her earlier bravado nothing but ashes. Friends, can you imagine it? A woman who entered this courtroom dripping with arrogance now lay bare before the world, stripped of pride, stripped of lies, stripped of every shield she thought could protect her. The transformation was brutal, almost painful to watch. But it was real. The neighbor, silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the years of suffering he had endured. All I wanted was honesty. That's it. I didn't want her destroyed, I just wanted the truth out. Now everyone can see it. The woman turned toward him, tears staining her cheeks. For a fleeting second, her face softened, not with anger but with something close to regret. Yet it was too late. Regret cannot erase the past. Judy's voice carried again, firm but almost reflective. Ma'am, you thought power was in pretending. You thought control was in interrupting, in deflecting, in shouting louder than everyone else. But real strength comes in admitting who you are and owning the choices you've made. That's what you've never learned. The courtroom felt it. Every word landed with the weight of a gavel strike. This was more than just a legal ruling, this was a moral reckoning. The woman buried her face in her hands, rocking slightly, mumbling words that no one could make out. She had lost the fight, not just against her neighbor, not just against Judy, but against the truth itself. And Judy, sensing the climax had reached its peak, delivered the piercing line that sealed the moment. You came in here entitled. You'll leave exposed. And maybe, just maybe, you'll finally understand what humility feels like. The words echoed long after they were spoken. The audience sat stunned, their emotions torn between shock, pity, and awe. Friends, this was not the ending of a case, it was the collapse of a persona. A woman who believed she could bend truth to her will had been forced to confront it head-on. And in that confrontation, the entitled woman's world crumbled before our very eyes. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that feels alive, pulsing with anticipation. The entitled woman sat slumped in her chair, her arrogance stripped away, her sobs still echoing faintly. The neighbor stood tall, not gloating but relieved. He had waited a long time for this moment. Judge Judy, however, remained composed. Her eyes moved slowly from the neighbor to the broken woman and then back again. She let the silence hang, stretching like a taut wire before she spoke. This courtroom, she began, her voice clear and steady, is not a stage for games. It is not a place where arrogance triumphs over honesty. And it is certainly not a shield for lies. She turned directly to the woman, her gaze unflinching. You interrupted. You mocked. You tried to control this room as though your pride could override truth. But truth doesn't bend to arrogance. It doesn't disappear just because you shout louder. The woman looked up, tears streaking her cheeks, but Judy continued, her tone like steel. Your past speaks for itself. Bankruptcies, fraud, debts, evictions. You walked in here with a facade of superiority, but the reality is that you've left a trail of pain behind you. And today that trail ends. The gavel rested in Judy's hand, but her words were sharper than any strike. This ruling is simple. You are responsible for the damages your neighbor has endured, and you will pay what you owe. But more than that, let this be clear. Arrogance is not immunity. Entitlement is not power. And no one, not even you, stands above accountability. The neighbor exhaled, his shoulders dropping as though a burden had finally been lifted. Relief spread across his face, but Judy wasn't finished. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing once more at the woman. You wanted this courtroom to be your platform. Instead, it became your mirror. And what that mirror revealed was not strength, but fear. Not success, but deception. And if you're wise, you'll take this moment not as humiliation, but as an opportunity to change. The woman sobbed quietly, her hands trembling in her lap. For the first time she had no words left to throw back. Judge Judy raised the gavel, the symbol of finality. Judgment for the plaintiff, she declared. The gavel struck once, sharp and decisive, and the sound rang through the room like thunder. The case was over. But more than that, the performance was over. The mask of entitlement had been shattered, the lies dragged into the light, and the truth had prevailed. Friends, everyone in that courtroom felt it, the power of justice not just in law but in truth. And though the entitled woman left that day with her pride in pieces, she also left with a lesson she could never forget. No amount of arrogance can shield you from accountability when the truth finally speaks. And so, friends, the gavel fell, but the echo was more than legal, it was personal. This case wasn't just about unpaid damages or neighborly disputes. It was about arrogance meeting truth, pride meeting justice, and the reminder that no mask can last forever when the light of honesty shines upon it. What would you have done, friends, if you were in Judge Judy's place? Would you have felt anger at the arrogance? Would you have shown pity for the desperation? Or would you, like Judy, balance both, delivering justice with sharpness, yet reminding us all of the humanity that lies beneath even the most broken choices? This story teaches us something timeless. Power is not in shouting the loudest but in standing firm with truth. Entitlement crumbles but accountability endures. And sometimes, the very moment someone believes they are untouchable is the exact moment they are finally brought down. If this story moved you, share it with others. Tell us in the comments how you felt when the secret was revealed. And if you want more stories where justice collides with pride, subscribe and stay with us, because the next case may shock you even more.